Hello, everyone. So now that I've gone about 2 months of posting some content every day and I'm getting my feet back underneath me as far as that goes, and we've all got a little bit more time on our hands since we're all kind of, well, self quarantining at home, doing the whole stay at home order, I figure that I'm going to go forward with some plans I had for this channel. So before I do that, I thought it was best for me to reflect on what my body of work has been because I don't know that we're going in the same direction, but we're definitely going to build on where we've been. Hi, Dan. I see you in the chat right there. Um, so today is just me. I didn't set up any portals for people to jump in on this stream because I was just going to do some self reflection, um, talk about some of the ups and downs of my channel and what people know me for, you know, why people have subscribed to me. And I'll start with like the little things that, you know, I think a few people might have subscribed to me for these things and then figured out that I don't keep my attention on any one thing for that long. But a while back, I had a news channel use a bit of my footage of the Waldo Canyon fire, and this was 2013, 2014, and I had a couple of documentary news organizations, international documentaries, asked to use some of my footage of the Waldo Canyon fire that I actually was surprised that they asked and was happy because a lot of my footage was lifted from my channel. There was just literally flames leaping in the air in weird good shots, but it would be lifted off my channel and put into the middle of a news broadcast, and then the only credit that would be given would be YouTube, right? And so that was pretty much like the most, uh, I think, the most public airing of my footage to date um, at the time. And that was, again, 2013, 2014. I was getting, you know, put in different uh, documentaries that would be viewed by people in different languages, and I thought that was pretty cool. But it was definitely just a chance happenstance thing that my friend Robin was stuck in her house in Cascade, Colorado, and the flames were coming towards her house, and so I went up there with my truck and trailer and helped load up all of her valuables, and we took it to a storage place that was donated because the city was like in a crisis over this big fire, and so the footage that came from that of the fire coming down the mountain at us was it was impressive that I got it, but I wouldn't want to put myself in that situation again. Um, so that was one point in my channel that I was getting a few subscribers that some of them were just formerly of the area. Some of them had gone to Fort Carson or uh, the Air Force Academy, and the footage that I got of the Air Force Academy on fire, like the housing units that were actually on the academy's property that were on fire. I had people commenting that that wasn't the actual Air Force Academy's property when it clearly is. I mean, like you can see many of the landmarks from the Air Force Academy in the footage, and people were really adamant, like, no, no, that's not. I'm like, I was there, you know, but yeah, I got a couple of subscribers from that, but around the same time, I'd been really active in activism, and uh, when I stopped being about uh, just activism in general and went back to what started my channel, which was actually the story of me living in a very religious community as a non-religious person. um, People started dropping my channel in droves. Like they subscribed for the activism or the fire, but when I started going back to my roots and started talking about, and by the way, I don't believe the same religion as you guys, and I have reasons, and this is silly. These things that I'm seeing around me, people just left my channel like really quick, dropped it like a hot potato. So that was my first introduction into, you know, if you don't keep the same theme on your channel, you're not going to get really good results because people will subscribe for one thing and expect to get that thing over and over again. So when you hit that one hot video, you might want to stick with that theme, right? But I decided that's just not me, and I pressed on. Now, uh, around 2014 and 2015, I started doing painting uh, on my channel. Some in live streams, some just I would paint before doing a stream, and you might have seen these paintings all around. And also some I just mailed to people who were Patreon donors and just friends of mine. And I have paintings of mine in so many different states now. Um, it's pretty funny. I consider myself accomplished in that I have artwork that I made uh, hanging in people's homes in different countries. Some of them friends of mine, some of them just purchased some paintings that they saw that I made in a video or were just hanging behind me. So, yeah, that's been a theme for a bit of my channel, but around 2019, I had a spell where, like, for the whole year, I was hardly making any art, and I was just piling up things in this room. And so I've been trying to reclaim this room as both my YouTube art studio and also my regular, physical medium art studio. And Misty wants access to a crawl space that's going to be like really hard for me to give access to because it's where my art desk is. And I have a giant cement slab that I've been making art on, and it's going to be just a whole week of me figuring out how to angle things and get things just right. So, um, you know, things change. This whole room used to be in reverse. The computer and the camera and everything used to be on that wall, and everyone was looking at things this way. So the window that's right there, that's between those shelves right there, that used to be that way, you know. But this chair has been a staple since I got into this uh, room in 2014. And prior to that, when I was in a different house down in Colorado Springs, I had a chair like it, but it was so beat up that when I moved here with Misty, um, she said, "You can't take that chair with you. It's too beat up. We're just gonna go get you a new chair." So this lazy boy has been my chair since 2014, and some people say it kind of looks like I'm Dr. Claw. Uh, that's fine. It's comfortable. Um, in 2013 and 2014, I was running a business where I was leasing out a giant space on the main drag in Colorado Springs, Academy Boulevard, and subletting it to antique dealers. And it just wasn't bringing in the money. And I got caught up in that fad of uh, Storage Wars and Antiques Roadshow and all that kind of stuff. And I did a couple of videos from my store. Um, a couple of them just renovating it are labeled with the word uh, Prayer Town, because that's what it was before. That it was actually like a Sunday school extension of a church, and so I had to renovate it into the antiques market, and yeah, it was good times. Um, I learned about uh, I learned a lot about antiques in that time, but I learned more about business. I feel like I got at least a bachelor's degree worth of business knowledge in 1 year crammed into my head, and still had my business fail. But statistically, your business is destined to fail. It's very rare that they actually succeed. But yeah, I learned a lot. The trauma of losing a store has not left me, and so I have been very wary of starting up a new business. And uh, even though I have the credentials to go start my own business, I don't. I have the a bit of the capital to do it. I could try, but I've learned that you need to have a war chest that's many times larger than it would take for you to just cover all your bills. So if I had started my own company, um, doing what I do as a hired gun right now, I would be facing this horrible economy of you know this lockdown. And a very similar thing happened to me when I started my last business. Was there was a government shutdown, which really affected Colorado Springs uh, very much in that year, and nobody had any money to spend on anything. Then there was the Waldo Canyon fire. There was flooding after the fire. Uh, you know, it was just a horrible time to open a business. And I don't know that um, any time to open a business isn't going to have some hardships, but I felt like uh, I was especially doomed to failure with my business in 2013. And just those last months of knowing that I was going to fail, but I still was in there trapped. You know, I'd already sunk all this investment into it, and I was just watching it not pan out. That really, really hurt. Can't tell you how much that hurt. You know, it's like I can put it into words, but you don't know. Um, and that's kind of affected the output of what I do here on YouTube. You know, um, there was a point where everything that I did, I was willing to put out on camera. But then there were a few things that happened to me that I just kept close to my chest, like losing my store, and also uh, my brother went through a custody battle, and so I ended up censoring a whole bunch of family videos. Nothing bad, you know, but because of his request, because he was afraid that it might affect his custody battles, um, basically all family videos ceased to be shared on anything on the internet. No Facebook, no YouTube, or no nothing. And I, just out of respect for him, I was like, okay, that's what you want, then we'll just do it that way. And so there was a lot of content that people were liking, around the house with me, and my extended family and all that, and it all kind of just had to disappear for a while. And I stopped sharing family anecdotes. I stopped talking about family for a while. So I've been basically the YouTube caricature of me since around 2013. I feel there's always been this side of me that you guys don't get to see, um, and that's gotten worse over time. We'll get to that. Um, One of the biggest videos to come out of that era of me having that antiques store was I made a video about a Sears catalog. It's called The Man on Page 602, where it's, you know, they say it was just a printing ink flub, but basically it looks like the tip of this guy's penis is sticking out of his boxer shorts. And so it was a very big meme back in the day before computers, this Sears catalog. And there was a song about it. Uh, it was a popular song back in the day. And so I just made a video showing exactly what the song was about. And that I had a copy of not just the catalog, but the actual record that the song was on. Um, Went to a whole bunch of auctions and showed on video, what those auctions were like. It's not like Storage Wars. Um, but yeah, that was probably the biggest video that came out of that time, was that one strange object. Out of all the different things that I learned, uh, that one thing that was just random stood out to people. And that's been a theme on my channel, that I can't predict what will be the biggest hit on my channel. Every video I put out, I want the most people to hear it as possible, right? I want the most people to see it. I genuinely would love all of my videos to go viral, but I can never tell which ones are going to take off or not. I just keep expecting right now that each one will get just a couple hundred views, and even then, one will just start taking off that I filmed 2 years ago, and just somebody picked it up and shared it in some network somewhere, and you know, uh, all of a sudden I get a little ad revenue, and I'm not expecting it, and that's cool. Um, for a long time, while I was just involved in the larger atheism movement here on YouTube, um, with all the new atheists and the great debate community, uh, my most popular video was actually captured from C-SPAN, and it was President Obama answering a question posed to him from an atheist. Uh, and that atheist actually turned out to be Amanda Knief, and she's actually a office holder in American Atheists now. And this is 10 years ago. She just got on TV and asked the president a question, and now she's still doing good work for the secular movement, and so that's pretty cool. Um, but yeah, it was my first video that got over like 100,000 views. Um, but yeah, I think that uh, even in the first couple years of my channel, I think I've been known for being erratic and having no overarching themes to my channel, at least not anything that spans more than a month. Um, I go uh, where my interests go, and I've been kind of divorced from uh, getting trapped in making the content that I think my viewers want to see. There are a lot of content creators here that they end up stuck in a theme, and that's never been something that I want to happen to me. Um, I might envy how much more of a platform they get for doing it, but I don't envy the output that they've had to maintain, like daily talking about the same thing over and over again. That's just I don't know. So some people have said that I'm also known for my dry humor, gallows humor, sarcasm. At times, dad jokes, that too. Um, I also kind of went from around 2010 to 2012 when I was actually caught up in that wanting to make a career out of this, talking for a living shtick. I went from that to focusing on having fun and connectivity with other YouTubers, and being very open about YouTube's functionality. I had a series of videos on what it was like to be part of multi-channel networks like TGN when it folded, and how I had a whole bunch of videos that I used their licensed music on, and then that artist, when they folded, was free to sell their whole library to someone who then copyright claimed a whole bunch of my videos, and that was so much fun. You know, I used those royalty-free songs because I thought that they would help my videos stay uh, timeless. And in the end, it was those little songs that had me lose a whole bunch of videos off this channel. And so that sucked. And I shared the whole story with everyone. Um, Times that I got a DMCA, like from Pure Paranormal, I had almost 100 YouTubers mirror or bring attention to the fact that I was DMCA'd by Pure Paranormal, which really scared the bejesus out of them to the point where they filed paperwork to change who the owner of the company was. Um, and they took down part of their website and all that. And then after about a year, I think they realized that I was not going to go after them with the legal system, that I was just going to let the shame on the internet be their punishment. So the ownership got switched back to the original owner. But for a while, they thought as a business of taking people on tours through graveyards and stuff, and doing little impromptu seances on graves that they have no permission to be near, and telling people to just go behind a crypt to pee if they have to pee on the tour. That you know, they went back to that, and that's what I was exposing them for, with the help of Brian and Baxter, and yeah, just that whole updating people on every step of that process. I think I was known for being forthcoming with the behind the scenes stuff. I've had no problem showing screenshots or just doing live streaming of my actual analytics. Because I feel like there's this draw that shouldn't be there. If you ask kindergartners these days, what do they want to be when they grow up? It's not astronaut. It's YouTuber. And so um, I think that if people knew the actual payouts for even like a moderately successful channel, they'd be like, ooh, that's not really enough to live off of. And that's not really a secure income either, because, adpocalypse happened. But one of my biggest videos from being forthcoming about how YouTube works behind the scenes is I showed the calculation for the percentage that YouTube takes out of every super chat donation, right? And so um, it's a 60-40 split. So YouTube keeps 40% of every time someone donates to me in a live stream. And that's why I tell people, there are better ways to give me money. If you were to just take the same amount of money and pledge it on Patreon and spread it over a year, that would be better for me than uh, giving me a one-time giant sum where YouTube takes 40% because Patreon takes like 10. You know, and there are other uh, platforms that I think I'm going to start promoting that actually take zero. One of them's called Coffee, and I think I'm going to be switching to that soon, just because I think people should know about better ways to support the creators and how this actually works, rather than the whole mystique of um, people who don't want to show their numbers because then they might look a little bit smaller than they're actually trying to hype themselves up to be. Um, People rely on the production polish a lot in order to fake it until they make it. And that faking it till you make it actually lures a whole bunch of other people who also are not going to make it to the level that they're going to need to be able to subsist on. So you've got a whole bunch of people putting out content on YouTube for free that YouTube doesn't have to pay for, and they just collect all the ad revenue on, and they pay out not enough for these content makers to live off of, but they're getting all this free content to put ads on, and so it's a vicious grind, and I am upfront about it, and I think that's what some people know me for. Um, Mailing things to people. I have a long-standing practice of sending boxes of random junk to people. Also, people have sent me strange things. Most notably, the crazy puzzles I have gotten in the mail from Aldous Valor. Some of them, I think, threatening my life, but also just on other people's channels, there are unboxings of the things that I mailed them, and so I'm kind of known from other people's channels for that. Um, and handing down things that I don't need anymore, and just putting things in their place. That's one of the things that I think the antique store has left in me, is that I like things to have their place and not be just thrown in the trash. I like things to be valued. For instance, I still have the stapler from when I had my antique store, and it's the kind where, in order to put new staples in, you have to take this thing out, and it's like a spring-loaded thing that you pull right there. This stapler, I have no idea how old it is, but it's sturdy and it still works. You can still put staples through like twice as many pages as this classic swing line right here, right? My stapler, you know. But yeah, this is not the red stapler from Office Space. This predates that. So got another one right there. Anyways, staplers aside, if I know a good place to put a relic that needs to be cherished, then I like to send it to somebody. Um, Likewise, I did a series of videos on my channel called "In God We Rust," where we were taking a Sharpie and marking out the T in trust on the back of any currency that had it, and trying to make videos, marking up the most amount of currency. And so uh, I got a few of those videos still on my channel. And Sea Beach, another YouTuber, he actually sent me from his late brother's collection a couple of bills that predated "In God We Trust" being placed on currency. And so I have those still. And yeah, I like when the story is that something makes it to where it belongs, you know, and something's going to be cherished. Oh, Dan in the chat says he loved all the Easter chocolate that I have sent in. I'm not sending out any Easter chocolate this year because coronavirus. Um, I'm not going out the day after Easter to exploit all the 50% off sales. That was a thing that I used to do. I used to encourage people to do that. Um, tag videos. Tag videos is something that I've been known for. I have participated in them as a person who was tagged and then tagged other people. And I also started a few tags. Two in particular were hashtag what's destroying YouTube and hashtag come back to YouTube. And there's a playlist on my channel page of those, and uh, more than 100 people chimed in on what is destroying YouTube and then tagged other people and whatnot. Um, I'm probably going to send this tag video out to other people so that they just do a little bit of reflection on their own as to why people know them, and that'll maybe uh, help them decide where they're going to go in the future. You know, just thinking about their own body of work. Um, I've also been reminded lately that I coined the term the Great Debate Community. It was originally a label that I was using in the series I had on the Weekly Flags recap, where I was just talking about people who had been false flagged on YouTube and just flagged in general, false or not, and people who had been DMCA'd and were vocal about how much they felt like they were wronged. And so I stopped doing that series, and I made a long video as to why. But the main reason was uh, people stopped supporting each other, thinking that they would get enough support just by me recapping all of the flags. And what ended up happening was people stopped watching that series. Each show had progressively less views on it, and so what was happening is people counted on me recapping the flags to get their shout out rather than what was happening before that on YouTube, where people would just all mirror a video that was flagged down. And that way we had like the Streisand effect, where if a video goes down, it pops up, 20 more times. And so you can't ever erase something off the internet that you don't want people to see. People stopped doing that. And I saw that larger channels that had more reach than mine got more uh, use out of just popularizing one or two censorship stories that were really good than I was getting uh, putting out every flag that happened every week. And even though there were some great stories in those flags, it wasn't as effective in reaching people because I've seen a lot more uh, concern over one or two people getting censored here and there than the fact that it's been rampant, even since then. People have been abusing the DMCA left and right. Um, I've also been known for collaborating, bringing people into uh, live streams, and also just making submissions for larger pieces of work. I had a a road trip where I put a whole bunch of different YouTubers in the same clique that I'm in into one long montage, and I was separating the clips that I'd take from each interview by what question I had asked, and I asked all the people that I met on my road trip the same set of questions. So then I just had videos of everyone answering the same question, and that was a pretty expensive collaboration, considering that I didn't even get more than a couple hundred views uh, on each video, you know, which wasn't the most expensive video that I've ever made for uh, crappy views. That was actually going out to see the solar eclipse a couple of years ago. Misty and I took a trip to Nebraska to be right in the path of totality, and then we made the most of that trip, and we went up and saw Mount Rushmore and uh, the Crazy Horse Monument, and made a trip of it, and tried to get the most out of the trip. We spent, uh, I would say, we dropped about 5 grand on that vacation. And when I came back and I put my footage of the eclipse up on YouTube, not even 100 views. So sometimes the things that I like to do are very much not correlating to what you guys are going to watch. Even if I put a lot of effort into the video and I had multiple views of the eclipse where I had my GoPro set up so that it would catch the shadow going across the all of the horizon, so that people would see the progression of the shadow. And then I had uh, one camera pointed on the eclipse at different times of the day as it was progressing, and my thoughts and feelings about each stage of it. And then um, I got footage from Misty's camera where she got some really great pictures, and you know we set up a lot of equipment to capture that thing to not even make 100 views on a video. But this is a labor of love, people. This is not about uh, this is not about becoming famous. I see becoming famous to the point where you can quit your job and just do YouTube full time. I see that as being more rare than a lottery ticket winning. Like winning the jackpot with a lottery is better odds at this point. And even then, some of the YouTubers with the best view counts are demonetized and hurting for money. So, yeah. I'm also known for being on The Breakfast Club, being one of the people in the old Hate Club, visiting other YouTubers visiting me. Um, I've had camera fights with people where we're both filming each other, you know, camera fight. Uh, Misty and I like to explore abandoned houses. That was something that Misty brought into my life. I had done a little bit of strange exploring, like Inventor and Gorilla and I once went down some really packed, crowded streets in order to catch a glimpse of a space shuttle being dragged along city streets in Los Angeles on its way to being put into a museum. And so, I had done adventurous things like that before, but Misty is really the one who's brought all of the macabre things into this YouTube channel, like abandoned houses, um, historic sites, uh, murderers' houses, places where people died, um, and the biggest video on my channel right now is actually about Chris Watts, who murdered his wife and children and put the children in like a little oil well and was trying to bury his wife right next to it. And, you know, the bodies were found, and Misty and I went out to where the bodies were found. We found the location, and we put the GPS coordinates for that in the video, and it was a hit. And people were watching what was basically a regular travel vlog for me. That when I filmed it, I didn't even think that I was going to get more than 200 or 300 views. You know. Hi Andy in the chat. Hi Bugsy. Hi Kip. Hi Chemo. Hi Jamie. Um, so yeah, I've done a lot of exploring macabre sites, which it was strange to me that people would get really weirded out by certain topics, and give me reactions like they did when I would go to, say, a court case about a murder, when I had been to all of these historic sites where murders had happened, um, and put that on my channel. Been to a lot of cemeteries and whatnot, and then also I'd been through court cases where I sat through every day and then did recaps of it. Um, One of them was Bob Kraus, who in Colorado Springs was a medical marijuana patient who was charged with having too many pot plants. And it was because his doctor wrote a prescription. He had the number that his doctor gave him, and they busted him because they said the doctor wrote the prescription for too many plants. So the doctor was also being, you know, looked at in that one. But eventually, Bob won his case because the jury basically did jury nullification. Um, and then I actually filmed Bob getting his pot plants back from the police that they did not take care of because they put them in a storage shed. So he basically got the most stale pot, uh, aged by the police for years, uh, back, and they basically they destroyed his plants. But just the fact that they had to give them back to him from the evidence rooms, that was enough. I mean, they were covered in mold and they smelled, but just the fact that they had to give them back, it was awesome. Oh, Andy wants to know if I believe in ghosts. No, I don't. Um, but I have been uh, to a lot of events where other people obviously do. One of which was we were filming in old historic Elitch Gardens, the old Elitch Theater. And the only reason why we had access to that was that there was a ghost hunting group that rented it out for the night so that we could have access to the theater. So I was able to explore and went back into a room where there were all these uh, like circus paintings of, like, the strong man and whatnot, and they were all like put into a back room, and I was like prying things apart just to film what was in there, and it was really interesting. And up in the rafters, people had carved their name and the date, and the carvings went back 100 years. You know, so that was pretty cool. Um, for a while on this channel, when I would say from 2011 to 2012, I had a few exchanges with other YouTubers that, I say that they were popular, but they only got a couple hundred views each. But that was the most popularity I'd had on my channel, um, and that was just doing the trend of ponage. I had a back and forth between myself and Inventor Gorilla, who ended up being a good friend of mine. Um, Ashes the Raven, who did not, and I was also in what was called the Ponage Olympics. It was run by another YouTuber called Richard Coughlin, and yeah, each year for a couple years in a row, he was throwing a contest where people should put submissions in for different themes of ponage, and I think we all could have done with a really good definition of what ponage was. Um, a lot of times it turned into people making videos that were just mean spirited and cyberbullying, maybe, when the whole point is to look at somebody's argument and address it, correct them, and do it with style, right? And that style could be uh, that of being a little bit vulgar with your insults. That's fine. You throw a little fucktard on the end, and everybody goes woo, and that's fine. But as long as you addressed the issue that they brought up, and you addressed their argument, and you did it with a little flair, that's what ponage was supposed to be. And sometimes it just turned into, hey, look at this circus freak show, and people pointing and laughing at a clip from somebody, and really no really addressing of why it needed to be presented to everyone, and what was wrong with what they were doing. Andy says he wishes that he had a chair like mine to write out this coronavirus shit. It would be easy to disinfect too. This leather, just wiping a Clorox wipe on it. Um, Pluto says, I feel you could do both as well, though. Yeah, you can insult people and address their argument and it be a ponage video. But I feel like the reason why Richard Coughlin stopped doing the Ponage Olympics was because it got really stale, with there being people who didn't understand that you have to address the other person's arguments. There would be 100 submissions to one category, and you could watch all of the different submissions, and there'd be 6 or 7 good ones, and the rest were amateur video makers who really didn't understand the challenge. And Andy Bright says ponage is out of style, but I would say the word ponage is as dated as groovy or radical, as in like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles saying radical, not like Bernie Sanders saying radical, but uh, tubular. You know, um, there are certain words that kind of they stick to certain years, and I see ponage as being something that had its heyday at around 2012. But the technique that was used back then is used today. on current channels, and I would say the most successful ones right now would be like your Shoe on Head or your Bearing, you know, um, picking apart people's videos line by line in a very fair use way, where you're doing like a reaction channel, only each bit of their argument addressing it. And so there's a bit of flair to what they do, but also you always see them addressing the main points, the main argument that the other person is presenting. And so I would say what they're doing is of the same nature. It's ponage by formula, just not by name. So I got I got known in that uh, ponage clique for being a low level ponage YouTuber. And what's interesting was right after that trend died out, um, there was the Occupy movement that uh, caught my attention, because before that I had only done activism with like the Free Thinkers of Colorado Springs, and I had filmed a bunch of secular stars, as it were. I'd filmed Richard Dawkins, I'd filmed uh, Sam Harris, um, filmed a lot of smaller stars at the time. Greta Christina. I actually drove Greta Christina from Colorado Springs to Denver, and on the way, uh, my transmission gave out, and that's funny. But I filmed her lecture that she gave on sexuality, which is one of the videos that, like, sometimes I think I have something that's golden that uh, should go viral, and her uh, her defense of bestiality and calling it zoophilia as being an acceptable thing, I felt should have gone viral the day that I put it up. And still on my channel, it's there. It's like a ticking time bomb of like, oh, holy shit, she actually did make that argument. But yeah, you can never tell when a video that you make is going to go viral or not. You can have the intention of something catching fire and being carried by everybody else, um, but no. Um, Now, around that same time, I filmed PZ Myers, and he put out a new definition for atheism. And that clip of him redefining atheism was then used in a Thunderfoot video. And at that time, I was really pissed off that Thunderfoot did not give me credit for me going out to the conference, setting up, spending my gas money, buying a ticket, setting up my camera stuff, filming it, and then when I film it and put it up on the internet, he takes that clip out and didn't credit me. And I felt like at the time, he probably shorted me 500 subscribers, right? Little did I know, uh, in the future, he would credit me with something, give me 3,000 subscribers, and it would end up being one of those things where careful what you wish for. Because during the Thunderfoot versus Laughing Witch fight on YouTube, I was the one who uh, found out with a little research that Laughing Witch said that Thunderfoot had cost her like $25,000 that she wasn't going to be able to pay her employees and whatnot. And I found that she just so happened to have an existing already $25,000 debt. So it was odd that she was asking YouTubers to donate to her for all the damage Thunderfoot was doing to her of $25,000, which just so happened to be the same amount that she had already owed from a court ruling. So I made a video about that, and Thunderfoot credited me and put a clip of my video in his. Overnight, almost, I get like 3,000 subscribers. And what do they expect me to be talking about? They expect me to be talking about social justice warriors and shitlords. They expect me to be jumping into that fight. And because I'm so eclectic in the amount of different things I like to talk about, I quickly lost a lot of those subscribers. Basically, I had this jump in my viewership where anything that I put out would get a couple thousand views. And week by week, I could see it just peter off because I was not staying on topic in just trashing Laughing Witch or Friends of Laughing Witch, right? And I'm not saying I didn't do that during that time. I just didn't always do it. You know, I actually like to just turn on the camera and talk about whatever I'm thinking about. And, you know, my my interest in social justice, I think, um, it came from the Occupy movement, um, but also that one of my good friends in Colorado Springs is actually Becky Hale, the president of uh, the American Humanist Association. You know, there are videos of me on this channel riding around in a car with her. You know, asking her questions for my YouTube channel, and none of them got popular. No, you can even interview a famous person and think that it's going to go viral, and it will not. You know, sometimes no matter what you try, you don't know what's going to go viral. Um, so for a long time, I was putting out social justice style videos without even really realizing what social justice was. Social justice warriors versus shitlords happened like 2014 and 15. It was like a thing where people started using those terms, right? Before that, I was involved in the non-believers versus believers, and really the anti-science people versus the science people, and that didn't really fall along believer versus non-believer lines perfectly anyway. That's why I created the label, the Great Debate Community. Was there were people who were just upstanding YouTubers that might have a slightly different belief than atheism or theism, but they were still good YouTubers and they were getting flagged in the same clique of people, right? And they were traveling in the same circles. And I just wanted a label that encompassed all of these different beliefs that were held by these different people, right? It Great debate did not mean atheism to me when I coined it. It meant a group of people that were delineated by a whole bunch of them had flagged each other. And I could see the group and it needed a name, and atheist versus theist didn't quite capture everyone within that group, right? So when I was making these social justice videos, and not even knowing what they, that they fell under that kind of umbrella. Um, I felt like I was doing the right thing. I went to a flash mob of people dancing to 1 Billion Rising. It was a movement where they made a song. Uh, the woman who wrote the Vagina Monologues was like the singer of the song. And yeah, it was one day where a whole bunch of flash mobs happened all at the same time. And because of my coverage of the Occupy movement, some of my friends who were feminists asked me to go film that flash mob and tip me off to where it was happening. So I got a really good video of that flash mob. And every year around Valentine's Day, I get a bunch of views on that video when people are just remembering, remember that Valentine's Day where we all did the flash mob? And so they share my video around again, and I get another pizza worth of money every year just from that one video of them dancing to a feminist song. So I'm known for being a delegate in certain political parties. When I was living in Colorado Springs, uh, there was nothing you could do in the Democratic Party that would mean anything because the Republicans win everything there. So I joined the Republican Party and I decided to play spoiler. And I filmed every assembly that I made it to as a delegate. And I fell short of making it to the Republican National Convention. But I did make it all the way to the state convention. I went to the county, the uh, judicial, and the congressional assemblies before that. And then I made the state assembly. When I moved up to Denver, I could be in parties that reflect my own politics a little bit better, and I joined the Democratic Party and became a delegate for them and filmed all of the assemblies that I went to for them. Now, this year, I actually missed the precinct caucus where I would have become a delegate because I was working. But then the coronavirus pandemic happened and all of the assemblies were canceled. So I didn't miss out. I felt pretty bad about not making it because I didn't realize that they changed the time to the middle of my workday. I would have taken off from work if I had known in advance that they were going to do that. Andy wants me to admit that in 2016, rather than jump on the Bernie Sanders bandwagon, I stuck with supporting Hillary Clinton because I was one of those people who wanted to not change horses in the middle of the race. You know, I feel like Bernie Sanders did have a lot better points to make. I just felt like he was an outsider to the party who was only in the party to use it as a vehicle to get the presidency. That's what I was feeling at the time, um, and I understood why the Democrats, uh, as a party, would not be accepting of him. Like the party establishment aren't accepting of him after he spent 30 years as an independent telling people why he wouldn't join the Democratic Party, right? But I did believe in a lot of what he was uh, putting forth, you know. Just like when I was in the Republican Party, I held my nose and I voted for Ron Paul just to be a spoiler, we were whoever was second place, we would vote for them, to try to make it so that there was more fighting in the Republican Party longer. Because the primaries going longer is what gives the other party a chance to capitalize on the infighting in the other party. So we were like, well, if we can't, add to the wins of the Democratic Party, we can at least be spoilers in the Republican Party. Um, but when I got to the Democratic Party, uh, what happened to Ron Paul while I was in the Republican Party ended up happening to Bernie Sanders. You he these are the candidates who had the passionate voters behind them, and that passion gets squashed by the establishment. You know, Pluto saying "Boo" 2016 AOD. Um, I will not. Uh, I will not shy away from the fact that I was supporting the Democratic candidate then. As horrible as she was, I will not try to sweep it under the rug. I still have all the memorabilia, but right now on my fridge, I actually have a Bernie sticker, a Bernie bumper sticker, and Misty wouldn't let me put it on the truck because she was afraid the window would get busted out. She won't let me put even my Steelers bumper sticker on the truck. So um, that's another thing. After seeing Ron Paul screwed at the Republican National Convention uh, and learning firsthand how delegates are supposed to work, and then seeing the different system in the Democratic Party with the super delegates that they had, and how that was basically rigging the game from the get go. And then uh, in this 2020 primary, um, just seeing how on Super Tuesday the the establishment candidates all folded except for Biden, and they all became like this Megazord, linked together campaign when they were fighting each other before that, but something made them coalesce together, and that thing was the prospect of the the actual liberal candidate winning instead of the more corporatist candidates. So that pissed me off. I will say that I was very let down because Bernie was winning up until that point, and what happened behind the scenes really, really pissed me off. Right. Also, the fact that Amy Klobuchar was allowed on a debate stage when she had just one delegate, but she wasn't making the polling numbers and as far as popularity percentage. But because their rules said anyone who already has a delegate gets to stay on the stage for that debate, and then in a later debate, they rewrote the rules so that when Tulsi Gabbard got a delegate, she wasn't allowed on the debate stage. You know, when I saw that, I was like, that's more of this fucking dumb fuckery that was the reason why I was pissed off at the Republicans for Ron Paul's campaign, while having no vested interest in Ron Paul winning anything. I was just pissed off about all the fucking chicanery, right? But even the fact that when Tulsi Gabbard did good in the debate she was allowed in to begin with, and then the day after her ad campaign with Google was suspended and their accounts were locked out and they couldn't understand why. And so the steam that she had when she was being searched on Google the most, on those days, she didn't have ads up because Google had suspended their account and couldn't give them a good reason for it. That shit pissed me off, you know. And I'm not even somebody who endorsed Tulsi Gabbard. You know, in 2016, after Donald Trump won, the next day I said, okay, a good medium between what Bernie Sanders wanted and a little bit more of establishment credibility would be Elizabeth Warren. So that's who I'm supporting 4 years out to have somebody grow, some steam to actually get rid of this fucker. And yeah, this is two presidential elections in a row now that I made a prediction 4 years out and didn't work out. But before that, I'd actually predicted every president years before the election. I predicted the winner. In the age of Donald Trump, uh, I am apparently politically an idiot. Like my fingers used to be on the pulse of America, and somehow now I am lost. And part of it, I think, might be the tribalism on YouTube forcing us into kind of echo chambers, you know, where everything that we see that we're looking at is really our own opinions reflected back at us. And so you feel like there's more of a movement behind your own opinions than there actually is. And this is true on all social media, not just YouTube, Facebook and Twitter too. So, yeah, this year, unlike 2016 now, this year I was actually initially supporting Warren, but pragmatically, because Bernie actually was in the race, and in 2016, when I was making my predictions for 2020, I thought Bernie wouldn't run because he was too old. I actually was supporting Bernie Sanders. I went to Sanders' rally, I filmed it, I put it up on YouTube for everyone to see, right? Wore Sanders gear out in public, uh, passed out some Sanders stickers, picked up a Sanders banner over there um, to be holding at rallies. Just did what I could. And if I would have become a delegate, I was going to try to be a delegate pledging for Bernie Sanders, even though the political system in Colorado changed this year to where the popular vote actually means who gets what delegate rather than the weird delegate system of the caucus that other caucuses have. In our state now, the presidential candidates their delegates are dictated by the popular vote, and all the other candidates, like senators and whatnot, they still have to go through the regular caucus system. We have a weird system that way. No, Ted, this stream did not just start, but uh, thanks for showing up. Anyways, I am known by a few people for being politically active. You know, whether or not I'm known for being on the right side of history, you know, that's largely in the opinions of others. I was on the wrong side of history, you know. But this year I was trying to come around, and I definitely see now that within the past 3 weeks, like millions of people filing for unemployment, and even more than that, millions of people losing their health insurance ahead of, we almost have, uh, well, we have now more than 500,000 people have the coronavirus confirmed. So ahead of the coronavirus spreading across the country, let's just have everyone lose their health insurance because of the pandemic and fear and everyone losing their jobs because their jobs were locked down. Having our health care connected to our jobs here in America is a stupid idea. And so, um, while Bernie Sanders just dropped out of the race, I feel like we're seeing the greatest argument for his plans for Medicare for all. Also, in that secular activism that I used to do, uh, I used to film skepticamps where it was kind of like a TED talk, only people could sign up to do it themselves, like an open mic night version of a TED talk. And I made some people so known for their skepticamp speech that I actually got a couple people asked me to take it down because they didn't want their coworkers to know that they were skeptics or non-religious, and they would state that in the company of other atheists, they would say, "Oh yeah, I'm an atheist." But then when it came to their name being something you could search on Google and find their YouTube video where they were, saying as much, and their coworkers who were religious would be able to see it, then they'd send me emails and say, "Hey, could you maybe take that video down, that you made of my speech?" Um, my biggest video of any of the conferences and secular activism that I did was a video of David Silverman, who was the president of American Atheists at the time, and he was in a debate with another pastor, and sorry, a pastor that was visiting this Church of All Nations, which held a whole bunch of people. And David Silverman looked at the crowd and said, um, "The thing that will make you all atheists the quickest is for I want all of you to go home and read your Bible. I challenge you all to go home and read your Bible." And the crowd was cheering like, "Oh my God, this guy's an idiot. He thinks if we read the Bible, we're going to become atheists." You know, and the atheists in the crowd were actually cheering like, "Yeah, that's how it happens." You know, so that was my biggest video, and I was writing for uh, an online publication that no longer exists called The Examiner. And prior to monetization on YouTube, I was putting links to articles that I would write in the description of my videos because when people clicked on the article, I would get paid ad revenue from the article before YouTube opened up monetization to me. And then I ended up joining a multi-channel network for a while because YouTube uh, still would not partner me. And then when YouTube opened monetization to everybody, I left those MCNs behind and made videos about all of this. And so some people know me for that. Um, I'm also known for making videos about human behavior. And this is a blanket term, you know. Some of them are about psychology as a narrower uh, field in human behavior, but Also, me just talking about social justice in the social work sense. But I've made videos about stories from work, from places where I worked where I didn't have the same confidentiality problems that I do now. Now, if I tell a story about my work, I really have to do a lot of pre planning so I don't say anything that violates a client's confidentiality, which uh, earlier in this stream, I said we would get to the point where I would say, you know, that part of me that you guys see on YouTube has become less and less the full me. And I would tell you why later. This is that point. Um, so much of my life happens at work, and I can't talk about it. That it severely restricts the things that I'm willing to say on camera. Because of that confidentiality. If I'm going to talk about the type of work that I do as an addiction counselor now, I have to really think ahead and plan it out and make sure that I'm not telling any part of anyone's story that they wouldn't want out there. I really have to anonymize things and generalize because I can't talk about a specific person. But when I had jobs that were in the behavioral fields before that, like when I was a hospital security guard and was not beholden to the same sort of confidentiality rules, I was telling some really great stories about that. And some people really liked that time on my YouTube channel. Um, I have been doing vlogs about grad school, where I'm earning a master's degree in counseling. And that's been informative to some people. And just as an addiction counselor, I have spoken with a little bit of authority on addiction issues. And like, say, Andy, who was in the chat earlier, he might not think that, say, cannabis is addictive. We'll say I don't know that that's his position, but I would be the person that would be the best suited to call upon to refute that claim that you can't be addicted to pot. You know, pick me, right? And so I know those arguments inside and out, and so yeah, people know me for just speaking about the DSM in general. Actually, I did a few videos that would also enter the realm of ponage from yesteryear, but they were about people who had they had misinformation on how we treat trans people in the DSM nowadays, because the DSM 4 prior to 2013, it listed a few things as disorders that are no longer considered disorders in the DSM 5, which came out in 2013. So around 2015, still, I was making videos correcting people on their not knowing that we no longer consider certain things disorders, such as gender dysphoria. Um, let's see. I think I've been known for making videos about adapting to the times, you know. Whereas I at one point I was just a YouTuber talking about being non-religious in America, I realized that there was a larger body of work that I could go towards, and I was left behind by uh, the attacks on feminism. Like for some reason, being somebody who does count as a feminist right here, um, I got left alone. Maybe I just don't look like one. Maybe I'm a horrible feminist because I can actually be approached with a good line of reasoning to see your point of view. Maybe it's because as a counselor, I don't treat people the same way that I used to when I had a different career. But yeah, nobody really came after me with any sort of roasting. Poseidon wants to know why I'm doing a "This Is Your Life" style video, and if I'm depressed. No, um, to be honest, the depression happened last year, and I've been warming up to doing better things on this channel, and so this is just reflecting so that I can move on. Um, I still want to film activism when I can. I think it's good to get out of the house, but I'm afraid that we live in a new world where the kind of group activism that I used to love to film is no longer going to happen. Like the day after Trump was elected, I went down and filmed the anti Trump protests. Uh, and the people who understand why we need to social distance the most are also the people who are most active in leftist movements. That correlation is strong. So they're not going to do uh, collective things because they're listening to the science, right? They're not going to do things where they're going to infect each other with COVID-19. So I'm really interested in seeing what kind of protests can happen when assembly in massive numbers is not on the menu anymore because the leftist movements have been disarmed of that, you know, and I really feel like it's the primary reason why Bernie Sanders was basically castrated uh, with his movement because after Super Tuesday, as the people started stockpiling toilet paper, you know, um, and started being more afraid of going to uh, massive rallies and whatnot. As that fear increased, um, Bernie Sanders' grassroots efforts by going door to door and knocking on people's doors and getting out the vote that way and having in person rallies, that was his big strength, and it was not raising money in order to uh, purchase a lot of airtime. So basically, everything that was his strength, this virus, uh, this pandemic, it took away from him. And so going forward, there was no chance. Like he was behind by 200 delegates when he dropped out, but there was no chance that he was going to win because all of the different strengths that his campaign had were being kneecapped by coronavirus. I also wish that, as Bernie Sanders uh, conceded basically and suspended his campaign, I wish that he had made the point that the Republicans that insisted that the Wisconsin primary still go on as planned uh, caused lines where people were not social distancing enough and had people touching the same equipment and whatnot. And the number of people that die due to that within the next 2 weeks, and even the people that those people infect who cause deaths in the months to follow, that will be in the thousands at least in Wisconsin. That, you know, take it to the bank. You're going to see a big explosion of COVID 19 because of them holding the primaries. That's why the other states decided to postpone the primaries because of this pandemic spreading across the country. So Bernie Sanders was being held by the short and curlies because if he did not suspend his campaign on the morning of the Wisconsin primary so that his supporters wouldn't go out to vote for him, he was basically sending some of them to their death to vote for his, by this time, minuscule chance at winning the nomination. So he was, faced with this huge ethical dilemma that was caused by those Republicans. And still, people showed up at the primary stations to vote, and some of those people are going to die. I wish he had made more of a point of that, and I hope that any of the incumbent Republicans in Wisconsin, when they face their reelection, that their opponents bring up that point and say these many people died because of this person's actions. Um, Strange times we're living in now, huh? So I think I'll also say that I've been known for free speech advocacy, not just from the weekly flags recap, and talking about other people's flags and mirroring videos where people said, please mirror my video. I used to do that all the time. Also, just marking the larger YouTubers that meant something to me when they decide to leave the platform because of whatever reason. But usually that reason was not liking where the culture here on YouTube was going. And so when they YouTubecided, as I called it, I would make a video uh, basically just as a monument to the fact that half of a conversation that they might have had with another YouTuber is now gone. And some people might be wondering, well, where did the other half of the conversation go? Why can I only see the argument from this person's side and not the other? Well, something happened. And only half of the historic record of that conversation is now out there. Last but not least, I will say that I was known for live streaming and being willing to not have jump cuts that that would cut up my work and make me look like I was talking a little bit smoother than I was, not having to be edited all the time. I did ramble videos after ramble videos and labeled them ramble, and always put exactly what was in the ramble in the title rather than put clickbait. Um, these are things I think people who are subscribed to me know me for. You know, morning, Brian. It must be morning where you are. Um, so I think using Twitter, I'll probably tag a whole bunch of people to put out their greatest hits and tell people what their reflection on their own body of work is. And, maybe one more time we'll see people engage in a tag video. And, some people might have just a little bit to say, but I feel like maybe there's something to be learned by what I think my body of work is versus what everybody else might comment and say that they know me for. So if you're watching this later or if you're in the chat right now, um, go ahead and leave in the comments what you think I should be reflecting on and what you know me for and why you're subscribed. And I'll take that into consideration going forward as far as what sort of content I think I'll be making.